Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This podcast brings together current service members and veteran high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that will help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
So today our guest is Joe Cabrera. Joe uses his Texas candor and swagger to really pull back the curtain and talk about life. And I've known Joe since West Point, so we're going on close to 15 years. He was a super successful senior executive in a FinTech firm, but missed being in the trenches with the soldiers and the troops. And now he's been able to transition into Atreyu Running, based out of Austin, Texas, as now the president and co-owner. And I mean, Joe's got a fabulous career. Was an armor officer, but never really was around tanks, and we're going to dive into that throughout the episode. Graduate of the United States military, as we already mentioned, and earned his MBA at the University of Texas. Joe, welcome.
Hey, buddy. Good to be on, man. It's good to see your face.
Dude, I mean, we've seen each other in the best of times and the worst of times, whether it's in Ranger School or, right now where it's cold, it might be cold outside, but definitely not cold here. So thanks for coming on.
Oh man, it's my honor.
So now that you've been out of the military for a little bit, what's one thing you would say that you constantly implement daily from either West Point, everything else?
Yeah, man. I think for me, definitely keep a good physical regimen every day. I think it's kind of my daily character building exercise. So that, to me, that's kind of helped me get some clarity. I do some of my best thinking, at the gym or on the trail. But if I had to think about the thing that I keep with me dear to my heart and that thank God never gave up, because I imagine this would be something easy to give up, is getting up early, man. I get up still today between like 4:30 and 4:45. And for me, what it is, I've never been the smartest dude, never natural gifted genius or any of that stuff. Grew up in South Texas. So for me, one thing I did learn was kind of put your head down and work. And so what I realized about like getting up early, it actually allowed me to get about 2 to 2.5 more days in the work week than the average person. So like, and get up at 4:45, if you do 4 hours extra a day before anybody else is thinking about work, that's like 2 to 2.5 days extra. So I got like a 9-day work week. So in a lot of ways where I try to kind of maintain my edge, and one thing that I thank God for the military is that I was able to kind of keep the essence of getting up early, kind of getting ahead of the power curve. And it's given me a full 9-day work week. And so that's kind of one thing that I think I'll always keep with me.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, even now I'm still getting up early and I don't have any reason to other than seizing the day. So I really respect that. With all this extra time, right, you probably have at least some more time to work on like a new skill or ability or talent or something like that. So what would you say you're currently working on now with that time, because you're waking up early in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the thing that it's something that I've worked on my entire life, and one that I feel like I got a lot more time, at least flexibility now to work on, is seeking to understand other folks better, kind of perspectives. And one of the things that I realize is that growing up in the military, especially, a lot of our, starting there, a lot of our abilities or a lot of our MO is to exert our will against our foe's will and figure out what it is that, we can do to overcome that. But as I've been in the private sector and really understand what really ultimately leads to winning, is kind of dropping your ego and being able to understand and learn what it is that the other side, what makes them tick. Why is it that they're even your competition? And so for me, that's just, I think we get caught up in being right over winning. And oftentimes when, we choose right because it feels good, it's a better way to, think that you can check something off the box there. But for me, the skill that I've been working on more and more and more is using that time to kind of calm my mind a little bit and think about a conversation I had this week, a hard conversation, and why I was having such a hard time reaching that person, or why I was feeling so motivated to get my point across. And so one skill that I've been working on is seek to really understand that perspective of that next person, then figure out what it is that ultimately can get us to a win-win in those situations.
Yeah. And as you seek to understand, how do you do it? Is it the same kind of, do you apply the same thing every time, or do you like have to kind of take a pause, step back, and really assess the situation, as we call tactical patience? Or I'd like to hear you talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, man. The first thing I tell myself is, there are two things. I literally repeat these mantras in my brain whenever I'm having a moment of like, gosh, man, why is that such a knucklehead thing on the other side? Why are we having such a hard time with this? Is one, there's a way that we both can win in this situation, and right now that's not happening. And two, the person I'm looking at is a good person. They got a reason that they're thinking the way they think, and I just need to better understand what it is. And that's dangerous because you don't want to be manipulative. That's not the idea behind this. The idea behind it is, Tony has got a reason he's thinking about it or holding to his guns on this particular topic. So maybe if I can at least put myself in his shoes for a moment, then maybe I can better understand what it is that what we're both trying to accomplish. And Tony, like 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times, we both want the same thing. We're literally just saying something very nuanced, different. You know what I mean? We want the same thing. So that's what it is. That's what I tell myself.
No, that's awesome. It really comes down to that language, right? Like you might be even saying the same words, but have different understanding and meaning of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Benjamin Franklin famously, when he was trying to pass some stuff, everybody was trying to start up in 1776, he had this rival, and he couldn't reach him. Like he tried, he couldn't get to him. But this rival had a collection of books, like very rare books at the time. So Benjamin Franklin was like, hey, can I borrow one of your books? And usually this dude's going to say no. He was not only extremely grateful that he was asked to Benjamin Franklin asked to borrow his books, they then became best friends.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you get that. And speaking of books, man, like what one book or like course or, YouTube video communication really has kind of influenced you becoming such a high performer. I know you're not going to admit to being a high performer, but you absolutely are a high performer. So what would you say that would be?
This is something that's going to ring true for both of us, man. The number one thing that I go back to in my life, I think, is probably Ranger training. No doubt about it. That course in itself of 61 days, if you're fortunate, longer if maybe you're not. Maybe if maybe if you need to stay a little longer.
Did you go straight through?
I did, man.
God.
Straight through, brother.
Good on you. Good on you.
Hey, man, I was, don't get me wrong, the all-inclusive stay at the resort was great, right. But, I wanted to be a good steward of taxpayer money. Yeah, and so that's why I didn't want to say that too long. But yeah, man, that has stayed with me and I'll tell you why. It's not all the normal, although it's absolute test of spirit. That's one of the biggest things I got from it is your test of spirit and how the spirit can drive the body to do incredible things. And all the kind of the grunty kind of stuff that we talk about the course, all the things that are kind of touted in the reason why it's a premier leadership course. But the thing that I took from that more than anything else that stays with me today is actually in that course really solidified professionally for me. How you succeed is more important than success itself. And the one thing they never talk about, at least I don't hear very often is, I don't know if you remember telling me, like at the end of every phase, right? They got us into like these rooms or whatever, and we did these peer evaluations, right? And I always found that fascinating, man. I found it fascinating because you could pass with flying colors. You could get straight A's. You could have all your gates, all your tests, everything squared away. And if your fellow folks on your team peered you out, they said, hey, I wouldn't trust this guy to be, take care of my family.
Right.
Doesn't matter if you got straight A's to the whole thing and passed it with flying colors, you were never to return. That's like the only way that you could stay at Ranger training over and over and fail over and over again, and they'd keep you to earn the tab. Right. But if you ever got on a peer out, you were gone, man, never to return. And I remember that solidified in my brain even to today, which was how you succeed is much more important than success itself. Yeah. And I think that's where I take it from. So I got to always go back, man, to that earning that fabric with 6 letters on it.
Dude, that is awesome, right? And for, those listening at home, like Joe was saying, 61 days of just, lack of sleep, carrying around heavy stuff on your back with a weapon and just living out in the wilderness with little food. And you're just going and leading and being led by others. Yeah, it's something I look back on all the time so fondly. And every day there's opportunities where I'm like, I've crossed this crucible moment. I can absolutely get through whatever is in front of me. Right. So yeah, that's a belief that's right, I agree with you and I've held on to for a long time. What would you say is kind of a new belief you really adopted, or behavior or habit in the last like 5 years or so that's really helped to improve your life?
For me, it's spending time to think. It's a weird thing for high performers. I think out there for alpha types or, former military, current military athletes, we're kind of, if I was a dog, I'm definitely a working breed dog. Like to me, I'm only happy when I'm moving forward, chasing a ball, doing something, right?
Right.
But I'll tell you what I've learned recently is taking time to think and be with your thoughts is super critical, man, because you miss things if you don't. You get so caught up in doing. You get so caught up in tackling jumping the next ridge line, trying to figure out how to go get the next task complete, next project moved, and you realize you end up missing a ton of. I'll give you an example. The other day I was running on Town Lake here in Austin.
Okay. Where is that in Austin, just to give us like a reference?
It's right downtown, man. It's beautiful. It's right on the Colorado River. I think it's one of the most trafficked, maybe Central Park's up there too, obviously, okay. But I know it's one of the most trafficked trails out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's right downtown. It goes right through the city. It's beautiful, man. I run on it often. And I was running there the other day and I realized I had taken this route every single time. And I had realized, I don't know what, but this moment told me to just, hey, look over there. You don't pay attention to that spot very often. Go look over there for a second. And I noticed there's a daggone goat path, man, that I've missed over and over again. I literally have had to gone some pretty sketchy ways to kind of make it down this one other trail.
Right.
I was like, why haven't you taken that? That's been there the entire time and you haven't taken it. And so it just kind of, to me, it reminds me that you got to step back, whether it's those 4 hours in the morning or whether it's a weekend or whatever, but you got to factor in time to have to yourself to just think. I think it's completely, it's one of those things that's underrated. But for me, one of the skills I'm working on right now is don't always feel like that doing or accomplishing some checklist or whatever it means progress. Sometimes you got to step back and just be with your thoughts for a moment, figure out what they mean, why you think about them, why you don't.
Right. No, that is extremely powerful. And it just, you were, like you said, you've traveled this road or the trail so many times and you saw this new path. And sometimes that's, people get fearful and stuff. They're like, it's a new path. Yes, there's new opportunities, but I don't know what lays down that path. Right. And as a high performer, right, we've talked about this before. There's been failures along the way, even when you do take the new path. What would you say your greatest failure has been that led to your ultimate, a great success?
Yeah, man. I think my daily failures. It's a weird question. It's a great question. I can't point to one single one, but I know I can tell you every single day I fail at something. Tony, every day, man, I fail at something. And to me, that is always my greatest success because it reminds me that one, it's a human process. Mm-hmm. It reminds me to forgive myself. The hardest part is when you fail something, you want to just continue to quarterback yourself as to why it went wrong. And what it does, what you forget, is preventing you from moving forward. And so those daily failures, man, there'll be financial statements I'll be looking through. We'll be going through an entire book dive on what, how we're performing. And I'll miss something really critical and realize, oh, heck, man, we only got 90 days of cash left. I for some reason thought it was, and I missed it. Right. Or, we had a strategy meeting and I sat there and I realized after I left, man, the one thing we should have talked about, all of us just missed. I missed it. I should have been driving that a little harder. Yeah. And what I realized in that moment is that those failures, right? I failed that, right? We should have done that. But it reminds me it's a human process. Give yourself some grace. And most importantly, forgive yourself and move on, because the only way you're going to be able to continue to build on top of that is to just kind of say it's in the past. And it's easier said than done. But I've kind of made a rule for myself to only allow things to be with me for 24 hours and then let it go. Even at the point of just knowing that there's probably going to be some reminders along the week, just try to forget about it if you can. So that's kind of how I deal with those things and kind of what helps me kind of move forward.
So you're at the 23-hour and 58-minute mark and you're still holding on to something. How do you let it go?
Oh man, I talk to my wife, man. I go talk to my buddy, right?
Let's talk about your buddy. Also a classmate of ours.
Yeah. Kelsey is a West Point grad, way more awesome than me, man. I mean, you should have her on this show, not me. I don't know why you got me here. But yeah, I'll go down. I mean, she's awesome, man. Division I athlete, entrepreneur herself, and just go get her. But I will say that you want to talk about accountability, like a gym buddy, man. She's definitely lifting heavier than I am. But I go down, you know, if I'm upstairs working or if I'm coming back from a day, I'll tell her. I'll just say, hey, look, I'm having a hard time dropping this one. And she'll remind me, hey, it's usually the same stuff. I should be able to tell myself this, but I can't. She's got to be the one to tell me, hey, you're a good person. You'll get better. You always get through it. Think about the last 100 times this happened. Did it really cripple you forever? No. Okay, let's move on. Typically, after we talk through that, after some supper and stuff, then I'm good. So I, suggest that if you don't have somebody, it doesn't have to be your spouse. I mean, it can be a best buddy or a friend or whatever, but we're always our toughest critics. And to have somebody who I think can shoot you straight, she's objective, because I know she wouldn't be where she is without kind of being critically honest with herself also. She's just not there to be a cheerleader, but she's really there to kind of hold me accountable. Because she'll also tell me, okay, yeah, you know what? Fix that thing and then drop it, right? Because you're right. The reason it's bothering you is because you didn't make amends. So go fix it and then be done with it, right? And so that's it, man. That's how I kind of get through it. And so I think it's highly important. I know that it resonates with you too, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I know all about having a high performing wife that is definitely just outlifting me in every aspect of life, which is awesome and inspiring too, right? It goes more towards like, you're never in direct competition. You see more as a worthy rival, right? Like you said, you can go to at any point and really kind of get any counsel and reminded like, hey, you're undefeated with your failures, right? Yes, you failed, but like you've always come back and gone on to do great things. So that's awesome. And talking about that really makes me think like, being present in the moment, like you were saying, and making sure you're identifying a win-win with the other person. How do you continue to be better than yesterday?
It's a great question, Tony. I think some of us are built. Here's how I do it. I'll just
I want to know how you do it. I don't want anything else other than that.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think about a way to like describe it in this, because this is going to come off weird, but I'm just going to let you all in my head.
We're going to tease it out of you.
Yeah, man. The reason I'm better than yesterday is because I have to be. And I say that not because I mean that in such a highfalutin like, oh man, yeah, it's got to be perfect. It's not like that. Letting y'all dive into my brain for a second. Literally, every day, man, I think about two people I want to make proud. It's God and that's myself, but it's the 90-year-old version of myself, right? And I always work for that ghost. And so for me, what's weird is that like I got to know that I always think about 90-year-old Joseph sitting there, looking back on my life, saying, was it full of purpose? Did you help enough people? Did you create enough value? Was there somebody you overlooked that you should have helped? Was there somebody you helped that you should have let help themselves? Were you kind? Did you find ways to do things more than just create, an empire of business and all these other things? And so I never want to disappoint that person. And so in a lot of ways, the reason I'm better today than I am yesterday is because I gotta be, because that reckoning is coming. And every day is like, I'm getting closer to meeting that person. Yeah. And every day I'm like, well, you got to go faster, man. Cause I don't know that I'm one day less. I got one day less on this earth to go make up to that person. So for me, it's always that ghost that I'm kind of chasing and making sure that I'm living up to those values. At the same time, it's, I think it's kind of hardwired in me that way. And so, so to answer your question, I think on the nose, man, I think it's getting into my head for a little bit. I literally wake up in the morning. That's what I think about. Hey man, what'd you do? And are you, would that person be proud of you right now? Cause if they're not, you better hurry up.
Right. Cause at no point, right. Even as you said, you're like, high performer, you're always trying to do more and accomplish. You're never looking back on a checklist or a to-do list or like, all this other stuff. It's all just kind of like noise. And like you said, you're focusing on being the person you'll be proud of when you're sipping sweet tea next to Kelsey on the swing, the porch swing, 9 years old, just enjoying life and being like a life well lived that I continue to live as long as I'm on this earth. That's a beautiful thing, my man.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds, saying it, I wanted to hit right because it sounds, like, of course you're just basically saying you want to be successful as you can be. It's different. It's less about being successful and it's much more about not letting, it's kind of the same way. Like if you ever think about anybody you love a lot, the more than making sure you give them, good advice and all these things, you want to make sure you never let them down. That's really so what drives me is not letting that 90-year-old version of me down. That's my biggest thing. It's not letting that person down, because when I hit 89 years old one day, I'm going to be like, hey man, got 1 year to the reckoning. Did you do it? Did you,
right.
Is this person going to be proud?
Yeah. That's awesome. So before we go, cause this has been a fabulous conversation.
Yeah.
Right. You got a new podcast you just started. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, brother. Yeah. So it's called Professionally Offensive, and the idea behind the podcast, and it's sponsored by Atreyu Running Company, and great brand, one with a lot of meaning behind just the shoes themselves. It's really about just helping people be the best versions of themselves. But the podcast itself is really just a way to kind of dive into that unfiltered, raw perspective. The way that I describe it to folks is, most of the time as humans, we spend a lot of time trying to work on the car and polish it and wash it, making sure it looks clean. When the reality is the most important stuff's the engine. And I want to pop the hood on that podcast and through the podcast and look at it's a beautiful engine, but it's got complex parts. There's grease in places. There's loose timing belts. That's the stuff that I want to dive into, because ultimately we're all built that way, no matter how successful we are. Right. And I put that in quotation marks. No matter how successful we are, we're all human, and there's these things that I think connect us. And so the idea behind the podcast is kind of dive into it. So Professionally Offensive is up on all podcast platforms. You can find us, and love if you can check us out. Anybody is welcome to listen.
That's awesome, man. And if anybody wants to reach out, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So we're on all social media platforms. Atreyu Running Company is the company that I'm a part of now, and so please, you can find us on all on Instagram, via our email list, our website, all those other items. You can follow me personally on Instagram as well at Joseph.Cabrera, and Professionally Offensive as well. You can find us on all platforms. I think I mentioned that you want to check us out on. And so those are really the main ways you can find me, and ways you can kind of keep up with what we're working on here.
Awesome. Joseph, and you closed it out beautifully, right? At the end of the day, we are all human. And thank you again for your time, man. I really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. It's good to be on, man. I know you're doing some great things over there, so I appreciate you and the team getting me on here and to share a couple thoughts here for the day. I'm happy to dive into those things.
Yeah. And as always, we appreciate you, having our six on the Got Your Six podcast. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, man, you got it.
Bro. Phenomenal.
Good?
Like, dude, just tons of notes. Non-stop.
You're too kind, Tony. This was fun, man. I like the vibe. It's kind of, it's like rapid fire kind of thing. It's almost like it reminds you like a really good AAR or something like that, like after a mission or something. It's super cool. I love the format, man.
Thank you, man. And that's the point, right? Like, to do this kind of like, not like you're like trying to react to context and you're overwhelmed, but it flows with the conversation. And we, just like you on, Professionally Offensive, getting in, looking at the belts, making sure, let's check the gauge levels, where we're at, and hopefully provide some introspection for you, but especially like you're able to help other people and kind of get out there. Because you may or may not have had this along the way in one form. I'm sure it came in multiple ways.
Yeah.
But
well, good, man. Yeah. I hope it was good, man. I hope you guys were able to get some nuggets you were hoping to get out of there.
Yeah. I feel like I got away with robbery, because all what you gave away for free is absurd.
Well, thanks, brother. You're too kind, man. No, man. And I think this is great, dude. You guys got any other folks teed up? I can't wait. When are you all going to publish it, you think?
So I'm looking right now on like mid-April. Just trying to get there's some cool things that I'm working. I want to put a disclaimer in there that I'm trying to figure out how to make into a cadence, which is, I'm not one to do cadence, but I'm figuring it out as I go. But no, I got Evan Seal, another classmate of ours, lined up.
Oh, Evan's great, man.
Yeah.
Evan's great.
Verb Labs.
VRV.
Yeah. Just moved down to Austin like 2 weeks ago.
Wait, is that right? I got to go hit him up then. I might need to get a boy in art because he was on my little my short list here on like hitting up, and I didn't realize he's a Texas boy from Houston originally. So
yes, he is. See what he's up to. I'm talking to him on Tuesday. I was actually gonna plug you to say, hey, Foot Stomp, reach out to our boy. Buddy,
that's awesome, man. I love that.
I got him, Kristen Grice, another West Pointer, first female ranger.
Yeah, I think I know him. Yeah, I know she's awesome.
And then Don Tran, he's a former MARSOC guy, diver, and he does the Underwater Torpedo League, which he kind of founded.
That's awesome, man.
So it's like this, like almost looks like a Nerf football that's weighted. Yeah. And him and the boys used to do it for fun to adjust to being underwater for so long. And then he's turned this into this like a whole sports franchise.
Wow, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then of course my wife and Kelsey, I haven't reached out to Kelsey yet, but she's on the list.
Good, man. Yeah, she'll get they're so humble, man. They're so easygoing. I'm glad we kind of went down that road because I tell you what, man, they are way more beast mode than we are. We just kind of tend to, I don't know what it is. What is it? I think they got a better code they live by. You know what I mean? Like they're just not, I don't want to say they live by it. It's hard to explain, right? But the way they're so just, I feel like when me and you are swimming in the water, people know we're swimming. Like they're splashing. That's what I'm saying.
We're just, our difference is we just make more noise. They just focus on doing more good.
Yeah, that's exactly right. She's like a duck on water. Yeah. It's cruising, man. The feet are busy, but it's cruising. We're out here just splashing. Everybody's like, look at all that work those guys do.
Yeah, my man's doggy paddling made it 10 meters. It took him 6 hours.
Yeah, man. That's cool, brother. What else do you need from me? We got to do anything else on this one?
No, we're good. So how it'll work, this will drop. And then there'll be like an ad roll for 10,000.
Cool.
And then the other thing I'm also working on is a Got Your Six like Google form. So essentially people like write in like, and it, again, having your back, right? This concept. How do you have someone's back, through like audio? So people will write in like, hey, I've, recently got promoted. And then it gives me like 30 seconds or so at the end of the show to really kind of celebrate with people from the audience and like allow them to stack wins. Cause as we talked about it far too often, you're like, all right, done, on to the next. And it's like, hey, hold up, motherfucker. Like, you gotta just give a little bit here, give yourself a little grace and say, hey, great work. And if you're not going to do it, then I'll be the person that does it for you.
No, that's it, man. I love the idea of the podcast here. And I really do think it's going to help a ton of our vets, man. There's nothing wrong with careers that we end up finding ourselves into, but it does kind of, as I reflect on those that are getting out and are moving out, it's unfortunate, man. The level of potential, like the amount of building blocks that we have, it's weird. It's hard to articulate in 5 seconds, but it is. There's so much good there, man. Me being around business a lot and anywhere from, major investors to just, just really cool brands and whatnot. You realize as you start to watch these folks, these execs or these founders or these, high powered financiers or whatever, a lot of them lack that kind of just general individual discipline about just kind of doing the basic things right. Right. And that in itself, man, is powerful. And if you can figure out how to tie that to then bringing it into, well, he's not just Tony's not just a dependable guy. Cause I think a lot of folks, military folks, they show up on time, they got a haircut and they dress well. They're not going to be embarrassing. Yeah. You got to go look beyond that, man. These are the folks you want nurturing, running major corporations. And kind of a personal goal of mine, for example, is like, I'd love to have, almost like a civilian aide de camp when these military folks get out. Cause I think that their sponge factor, they can soak in a lot of information quick. Like a guy like Tony can learn business like that if given the opportunity to ride alongside a CEO somewhere. Yeah. And then your next job should be running a business, not running a warehouse somewhere and, there's nothing wrong with that job. But you know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Right. And it's a competitive advantage at the end of the day. Right. Like, and it goes largely untapped, and that's a shame.
Yeah, man. 100%. So now I think this is great, Tony. Hopefully there's a lot of folks that get inspired by this. I know they will, man.
Yeah. I'll force it into them. People will be like, I got to just listen to this guy because he won't shut the fuck up about it. But yeah, and then you'll expect from me in the next week or two, we're also going to produce some audiograms. So you maybe see them on social media where it's like, with our like the logo of the podcast and then some stuff for like nuggets that you produce. Feel free to use those however you want, whether you want to post, they'll be formatted for LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So you'll get a link to a Google Drive that'll have access to all this stuff. Because again, I want to just thank you for your time and highlight, I know you said you're a high performer, but I don't think you realize how much of a high performer you are. And that's fine. You're not supposed to. It's for other people to hype you up. And that's what I'm going to do all day long.
Oh, you're too kind, Tony. I appreciate that, man. But it's like breathing, man. You just can't help but be another way. I do think that it's fun to be around that. It's just kind of like the last thing I'll say is like the tab. Do you ever realize, do you remember, I was spoiled because I was in Alaska, then I went to Bragg. Yeah. And so for me, being around a bunch of tab guys, for example, now guys and gals, it just was like took for granted. And then, I'll meet my friends that were like at Third ID and they're like, there wasn't a Ranger tab for a football field. Like it just was, they don't even know what you're talking about. And I'm not saying that we're better than that or whatever, but when you think about how folks that just kind of think, well, that's probably worth getting crushed for at least 61 days to kind of let us have this opportunity to kind of prove one's worth or whatever like that. You get kind of spoiled. So you're around these circles of folks like, us, where we just kind of, it seems normal. Yeah. And then you get out and, I get people to remind me like, what do you mean you worked on Saturday? And it's like, well, that's just a thing. I can't not do that. Right. But, and it doesn't, I'm not obligated to do it. Yeah. Just literally like breathing air for me. Like it just makes me alive to know that there's value being created and we're moving and it's doing something interesting. It's probably no different than somebody watching football on the weekend or something. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I got my paddle right here, as you can see. God. Yeah, buddy. I know, man. And it's being in grad school, same thing, man. But it's people that have they can't comprehend the whole thing. So it's been wild for me to like understand and really reinforce why those qualities matter to me, and like give myself credit and also appreciate the experiences that I've had, as most of my classmates are like 25 to like 28. Yeah, man. Yeah, you're like the old timer in the group, but right. I do think there's this kind of reverence. Yeah, and I know you probably go about it all the right ways. I think the things that, because you've seen our military compadres, they go out there and they're very easy. Some of them are shy, which a lot of them are, but a lot of them are really quick to, when I was back in the Army, and then you kind of get turned off by that, right? You're like, brag stories. Yeah, absolutely. I know, man. They're bad. And you're just like, hold on a second. Nobody likes that. Don't do that either, So that's it. Well, Tony, I appreciate your time, man. It was just fun. Dude, it was my pleasure. Like you said, right? It's about showing, not telling. Thank you again. Please give your lovely wife a hug for me. And once we'll be out in Kansas soon enough, we're definitely going to make a trip out to Austin. But we'll be talking well before that. Sounds good, brother. No, and you do the same for Lindsay, man. It's good to see you. We'll do. Mahalo, brother. Thank you so much. Have a good one. All right, brother. Adios, man. Take care. Later.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.